here last year, and it's such an honor to be back again. And the Gsa folks have had me around a few times, which is wonderful also. Thank you, Kevin and Cheryl. Yes, yeah, I'm going to keep doing that. You're going to have a hard time. So, we have the exciting programs that I'm going to be giving you today on procurement and admissions and occupancy. This morning, procurement is one of my, believe it or not, favorite things to do. See, I'm going to drive Cheryl crazy if I sit right in front of her, so I guess I'll have to be okay too. I'm not used to a microphone unless I'm singing, so if I break into song, I apologize ahead of time. It's just kind of unnatural to be presenting because I'm a gesture kind of gal. So, yeah, it was a good day when I had that picture, right? What can I say? I formerly was the Grand Ronde Housing Authority Executive Director in Western Oregon. And for any of you that have visited the state, you might have been to Spirit Mountain Casino, which is the #1 tourist attraction in Oregon, and they funded half my program. So a number of the work projects that I undertook through procurement were both for mixed income development as well as low-income housing, primarily low-income housing. So we're going to be talking about various projects and methods for procurement, both for construction projects, for the day-to-day, and ways to make your life a lot easier doing procurements, which are time-consuming, as we all know. So we're going to talk about regulations. This needs a new battery. So regulations for procurement, you guys have them all the time. They are thick. We get into 2 CFR Part 200, they're thicker. I have some shortcuts for y'all, so that'll be helpful for you. Processes are complex. There's a lot of paperwork, a lot of steps you need to take to make sure you're in compliance. And there are ways to simplify the process. Again, you still have to take the steps, but I'm going to offer you a number of tools to make that a lot simpler. So what I do want is, if any of you, I don't want to be the only trainer here. You all have practices and things that you do that work for you. If you have some examples or suggestions, please, I don't know if we lost Vincent. Maybe he can bring the microphone around so that you can share. I definitely want to hear what really works for you or what maybe really doesn't work for you. So asking questions and sharing is big. And I'm going to try and get us out here no later than 12:15 because we had a late start. So, and then I've got a cheat sheet for the super circular related strictly to NAHASDA, where you don't have to go through the entire regulation looking up each section. Those, I believe, are your flash driver. There's going to be handouts that are going to be distributed shortly with those on it. Also, I can email them to you. I put everything in PDFs or Word, including the procurement policy examples, so that you can take them and just plug them into your own. So that's another thing that I think we're having flash drives prepared as we speak on that. So how to effectively and efficiently conduct your procurements, how to comply with all the wonderful requirements that aren't only HUD, as 2 CFR Part 200, of course. Learn about different ways to streamline your procedures and simplify your processes. I have a number of forms and example documents that you can utilize in your processes. Also will be shared. There'll be handouts for exempted regulations, that's what I was speaking about a moment ago. And then there are web-based procurement opportunities, which we're going to go through. A lot of you may do those already, and I'm probably going to ask about your feedback on that and how those have worked. So we know what procurement is. It's shopping. Yeah. The ladies like shopping, right? No? Some of the ladies, I like shopping. Anyway, procurement is buying stuff. Goods, services, contractors, units, commercial buildings that you may modify into a residential sharing housing project. Effective procurement saves time and money, avoids corruption, operates in a consistent manner. You do it the same way all the time. You have got your check sheet, you get on your check sheet, if it doesn't apply, hit NA, but use that check sheet. It helps you later when you get procurement efforts, if you've got that check sheet in there and the documentation to support it. And sometimes that documentation from my files would be 1/2 inch to 1 inch thick, and it's like, HUD wants it? Here you go, guys. Have fun. I mean, you don't have to look at it all the time. You don't have to make 100 copies. Just make sure you have it. Avoid outside interference by having effective procurement methods. promotes fair and open competition in contracting, and complies with the requirements, which we already talked about. So for the folks that don't know all this, a lot of you, this is going to be a little refresher. I'm just going to go over some of the basics. Principal procurement regulations, 24 CFR. Whoa, I'm already falling on stuff. And I haven't even been to, never mind. Okay. I didn't say that, Cheryl. Cheryl said that, and I didn't say that. That's later. So the list of requirements that are referenced in NAHASDA, the regulations for NAHASDA are 1026 and refers to 2 CFR Part 200, and that apply exemption provisions for self-governments. In what you're going to receive from me, what I did is I went through what I think most of you probably got, that NAHASDA regulations, the entire thing that had little, okay, here's an exception under 2 CFR. Okay, well, this is all the exceptions without having to go through 2,800 pages of NAHASDA. You're welcome, Cheryl. And it's in a Word, it's a PDF document, and if, I believe you're probably gonna get a hard copy, but if you email me, or I can probably just send it all to the Native Learning Center, they can send it out to all of you. You can use this, because it's, I mean, why go through the whole reg every time you wanna look it up when you can take my time spent and use that document. So the Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost Principles, and Audit, obviously 2 CFR Part 200. Say the Uniform Omnibus, oh well, I lost the short name. It has all the sections that NAHASDA used to have is pretty much related to this. There's no more Part 85 and all of that. I've noticed in some of the monitoring documents from EWONAP that they still reference Part 85 in a whole bunch of the check sheets. So I'll be harassing some of my folks in the Northwest region because they love going in and fixing all that stuff. And apply ONAP's existing exceptions, the de minimis procurement and NAHASDA definitions. And again, if any of you are unfamiliar with those, we're going to be touching on them, but we'll go through them also. So other sources of procurement, if you were using Title VI or using Section 184 or other things, you're going to have to work with lenders, maybe banks, native lending associations. Low-income housing tax credits also require a lot of regulations and requirements under procurement. And ideally, if you want to be consistent with all of those, if you're using any of them, except of course some of them have special circumstances, which they always let you know, and requirements. USDA Rural Development also has all kinds of senior loans, grants, and home repair options. Anybody in the room seen any of my webinars on the Native Learning Center? Okay, because I think I've done almost all of these. So you can look those up, they're actually archived. And there's a lot of information in there that can be very helpful as well. And bond projects. Does anybody do bond projects here? In the East, I know there's a number of them in California and other states. None today. So we have a raft of different regulations and requirements, and they can conflict. So you basically have to find a way to either comply with both of them or bail. Do another project, lose that source, and find another one that's comparable. It is less onerous to, especially tribal sovereignty. Where to incorporate NAHASDA? So procurement requirements are obviously in the procurement policy, and applicable contracting requirements are in the contracts. And oftentimes those items have the similar clauses and information. I like to provide that to my contractors when I'm going out to bid, especially if it's a sealed bid or a specialized contract, which we'll get into again in a few minutes. So fundamentals of government procurement, we have this up front: fair and competitive, reasonable and low price from a responsible and responsive contractor or vendor. Anybody heard that responsible or responsive before? I see a bunch of nods. Yeah, if you've done this, this is pretty regular, and we'll talk more about that. Open and public process. It isn't always an open and public process, and we'll also talk about that. Reasons for special government procurement. Yay, we want to save us taxpayers money. We're paying our taxes, it should go for a good thing. You want to award on merit, qualifications, experience, and again, we're going to touch on a lot of these. Appropriate government procurement bars political influence. Heaven forbid we have a tribal council that wants to use somebody that they've worked with in the past because they're their cousin's brother's sister-in-law's friend. Okay, I got one smile out of that one. All right, okay. before lunch, it's always bad time. Bar political influence, so avoid corruption and scandals. We had some interesting scandals in the Northwest a number of years back, and I'm not going to say the name of the tribe, but they spent their IHBG funds on night vision glasses for hunting and for whale watching tours, and they got busted big time, and that was a really blatant misuse of IHBG. In addition, they built a $300,000 home for the executive director to live in, who was not tribal. I think there's a few problems with that. And if any of you have ever seen the papers on that back in the late 1900s, early 2000s, yeah. That was one of my first introductions to Indian country when I started working as an ED, so, oh boy. So impacts on tribal procurement, which are different from the rest of the world, or we have a lot of isolated communities. We have a lot of communities that are limited in land space or have vast land spaces, like the Navajo and others. Limited suppliers, contractors, and workforce because of those issues. And harsh climates. We've got the driest climates, we've got miserable, cold, wet climates, we've got rainy climates, you name it. And they all have their own problems with both housing stock and construction and procurement efforts. So, important procurement issues, applicable preferences, we all know what those are. There's Indian preference, of course. There's also Section 3 preferences, which, for our community members, low-income community members, to be hired if they are able to, if you can, on community projects. You have to do a price and cost analysis. I have a price and cost analysis tool, again, to provide you guys. I think they're being collated as we speak over here by these lovely ladies. Yeah. Hold up the cards. She did. And once the award is made, the normal contracting procedures apply. And again, those are both in monitoring documents and in your policies, should be in your policies. So written policies and procedures have to have a list all of these requirements. You know all of them, best bid, best of 3, qualifications, whatever you have in there. They educate and explain the process for the procurement efforts, what your steps are, how you're doing it, what regulations, local and regional, that they have to comply with in order to be a successful bidder, and have uniform application. You got to use the same stuff for everyone else. That's the other reason for everyone else. The other reason it's a good idea to have that checklist. You can have a checklist for each size procurement, but have that checklist and do the same thing for every vendor you work with. If you do something different, there is a potential conflict of interest, and it looks like you gave them information you didn't give everyone else. And we'll get more into that in the large contracting document information in a few minutes. So you want to limit and discourage exceptions. As soon as you accept, you guys know how this works, then everybody else knows. Wait a minute, you let them not have the Native American hiring because the guy was his brother's sister. Just have to make sure that you are up front and you do the same thing with everybody. Even if it doesn't make sense and you know that person has heard it 20 times before, still at least give them the document in writing. If you don't, give it to them verbally. And again, we've already talked about these in-house corruption. You want to always ensure consistent application of the rules and compliance with the law and the funding requirements. So clearly, eligible members of federally recognized tribes, and federally recognized tribes themselves. You can have a whole tribe, like the one we're in here, as a model activity. I think most of you know that the Seminole Tribe's Native Learning Center is a model activity under the NAHASDA, which is kind of a great way for them to share it with us, so we can get trainings. Entities at least 51% owned and controlled by such members or tribes. And we're going to talk about what controlled means. And obviously tribal preference. You can have your own tribal preference. Does everybody have tribal preference? Does anybody not have tribal preference? I see like a few hands. Your own tribe versus any Native American? If you don't, I highly suggest you do. It's generally a political good thing. So how does the tribe benefit? You can spend money wisely. You want to get the most for your buck. You want to get the best contractors possible. proper and timely delivery of goods and services, and maintain credibility of organization and staff. And that goes a long way, especially if you're going for outside funding, some ICDBG. If you don't have good monitoring reports, haven't got all your IHPs and APRs in a timely manner, things of that nature, those can all count against you. Also with tax credits, I think there's some trickiness there as well. So types of purchases. Management, we've got your services, your accountants, your auditors. Don't we love the auditors? Office supplies, computers, construction, development, architects, engineers, depending on what all you're doing. So, yeah, and there they are. So, federal procurement definitions, force account. A lot of people do their own force account in this region. Construction, maintenance. I know we have maintenance for it. We've got, I see about 6 hands. Works well for you? Great, great. Management does everything. Bid, obviously going out to bid, looking for contractors to perform or deliver specified work goods for a specified price. And again, remember that specified price, you want to have that cost analysis before you go out to bid. You don't want to use those bids and decide what's a fair price. You need to make sure you have that done ahead of time. Proposal, offer from a contractor to perform services. RFP, request for proposals. I think we all know these, they're pretty basic. Contractors, contracting officer. For the housing authorities, the contracting officer is the executive director for all of you. Okay. I also want to check that because some regions work a little differently than other regions. And advertising, public invitation, formal announcement placed in a newspaper soliciting bids or proposals. Hopefully it's actually a contracting type newspaper. So they go out to individuals looking to seek large construction jobs. You'll get far more returns that way. And negotiate to bargain or trade regarding a purchase. So 51% ownership and control. I know we go through this in my 3-day procurement training a lot. And we have a lot of examples because this is really tricky. They can say, so you have 2 principals, and one's tribal member and one's not. And so the entity, oh, it does work, okay. Is it owned and control? So what's control? Somebody give me an example of control.
Making management decisions.
Making management decisions, exactly. How about running the office, signing off on major contracts?
Taking share of profits.
Shares of the profits, absolutely, and what percentage that is. How about ownership? It's kind of pretty basic, right? They've got so much money in it, they've got so many assets. But how do you prove that? How do you know that? That's where it gets tricky. So we got voting rights, management, decision-making, allocation of profits. And there's been a lot of folks that will use a shell tribal member in order to try and get tribal projects out of major tribes that have large projects, lots of money. And they can be very tricky and very sneaky. So you kind of got to be very vigilant about your checking on them and determining what exactly they've put in their notification and what you can find publicly as well, and or privately. So the process for procurement, you figure out what you're going to get, parameters, quantity, price, scope of work, do a cost price analysis, except for micro and small purchases, so those are under $150,000. I'm sure the Office of Native American Program staff would not like it if all those procurements at $149,999.99 were coming in, because they're going to know you should have just gone with the regular procurement process. So solicit bids, proposals, or price quotes. You then receive the bids, proposals, or price quotes. That sounds real simple, but that's a whole process in itself. Evaluating the bids, proposals, and price quotes. That's a good concentration. I see you smiling back there, curly girl. Award the successful bidder and enter into a contract or a purchase agreement with that successful bidder. And I'm going to get into a number of forms of contracts, and some that I think are far better than others for you to use for the protection of the tribe in your project. must perform under 2 CFR 200 Part 323 a cost price analysis for every procurement. Did you guys see the price analysis in those handouts? I'm not sure if they went out. Where's my file? Oh, mine's over here. I just stuck it in front of Fordell. Hey, Fordell. There should be a cost price analysis document in there. Quick guide. Everybody see that? Okay. Quick guide to cost and price analysis for HUD grantees and funding recipients. So I'm not going to go through all this, but I wanted to make sure you know it was in there because this will really help you set up your own process. It has real good information. Again, you can alter it to tribalize it, as I used to do, to copy your own procurement procedures. You like tribalize? Okay. Methods vary with costs and facts on how extensive that analysis has to be. Should start with independent cost estimates before bids or proposals. Again, these are up for $150,000 and up, so I don't think you have to do this to get your staples, pencils, and pens and notebooks every month. Not a problem there. That's a small purchase. Should start with independent cost estimates before bids or proposals. As I mentioned earlier, and we're going to talk about how that works. And cost estimates are not disclosed. And this gets tricky in Indian country because loose lips, people talk and they tell people stuff and then it gets told to somebody else and then they go, oh, they're expecting a $5.2 million bid? Cool. I'll go at 5.111. Yeah, so you have to be very cautious about who knows what and how you disclose that. I would really only have my number 1 and number 2 person at the Housing Authority know what was going on. And we would lock that up. It was not public information because they're large bidding projects and you want to make sure you get the best value. So independent cost estimates, again, before soliciting bids or proposals. So you don't want to have a concept in mind. Obviously, we all have budgets, especially when it comes to IHBG and or ICDBG. So you're going to have that budget in mind because you do this work and you know what things cost in general, but you still need to do that cost analysis to make sure you didn't miss anything. So you could do in-house estimates to analyze the needs and amount of work the contractors need to do. You can compare it to past projects and then add a factor, updating the amounts. So you use that to develop the state of work and then consider confidential information with the need to know access, which we kind of talked about already. So a cost analysis is different than a price analysis. And price analysis is used in all instances to determine reasonableness of proposed contract amount. And a cost analysis is just basically figuring out how much things generally cost. And there's a bunch of cost factoring sheets I'm going to be providing you here also, and websites. So it's procurement HUD monitoring findings. You always want to hear about these so you know what not to do. So just keep these in mind. And this is what they've found nationwide, not just in one region. Not using fair and competitive awarding professional contracts, so either using a sole source without documenting why, not going out twice for competitive bids when you only have one bid, things of those natures. Absent or unclear method of applying Indian preference, so not doing it at all, or maybe if they had tribal preference and Indian preference, not applying the tribal preference above the Indian preference, or whatever their points ratings are. And inadequate or no procurement policy. Inconsistent actions with the procurement policy. This is where you don't want to have any fuzzy policies. Fuzzy policies can be construed to mean one thing to one person and another thing to another person. And if you have 2 procurement people and one's doing it one way and one's doing it the other way because that's how they read it, yeah, not a good thing. Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff that comes up with the monitoring findings on. A couple of tribes I've worked with would have 2 different types of preference in different areas, and so they had one for human resources and one for procurement. And the one individual didn't know that there was two and used the wrong one. So that's the kind of thing you want to make sure everybody knows and be consistent with those. Again, more common monitoring findings: records are not maintained, no documentation. That's that monster file. You just say, here's the documentation, have fun, HUD, have a good time with that. Lack of that cost price analysis. And even if you don't or can't afford to go out to the companies that do cost analysis. If we're talking projects over $2 million, you know, generally you probably want to go out to one of those external firms just for the arm's length transaction, so it doesn't look like you're making it up for what you know you have, for what you think it will cost. Always, you know, try and fill out that checklist again. Any checklist is better than nothing, and have that in your file. So you want to make sure those small purchases are in accordance with the regs, and conflict of interest is in your policy, or there isn't a policy, so that's one of the other findings that has come up a bunch. Does everybody have a conflict of interest policy? Does everybody know if they have a conflict of interest policy? Okay, you're getting hungry, I can tell. Okay. So, goals for procurement activities: obtain the best possible goods and services at a reasonable price, comply with funding and program, understand the process, and facilitate proper delivery, and maintain required documentation. This is repetitive. So, procurement requirements, obviously, the NAHASDA funded requirements. Your own policies are what govern that, as well as tribal laws. If you have, if you're doing non-low income, you might be procuring things for housing members, family members that are not low-income families. Other federal and state laws, and other agencies and lenders cover this also. So here's the responsive and responsible. Bidder, proposer, or vendor responding to a solicitation provides all documents and information required by the recipient. I can't tell you how many times I've gone out to bid and get what looks like a really good presentation documentation, sharing information, and then they don't have any, they have like one reference. And you really want a lot more than one reference. I always requested 3 references, because they can call us, have one job they did 14 years ago with another firm, and it'll say, oh yeah, they're great, they're wonderful, go use them again. But now they're their own firm, and they're not experienced, and you're taking poor information. And I'm gonna get more into covering your assets with that shortly. So that's for responding. So for the bidder, proposer, vendor has the capacity and capability, both of those, to perform the work and or provide the goods properly and on time. Capable, are they licensed? Are they experienced? Capacity, do they have a staff? Do they have a crew? Do they have their own equipment? What kind of track record do they have? You know, checking the contractor state licensing board is a biggie. So 5 major procurement methods: micro, everybody knows that, 5,000, under 5,000. Small purchase, under 150,000. Sealed bids, generally construction or large contracts. Competitive proposals and non-competitive proposals. And we'll be zipping through those. And then I'll be talking about cooperative purchasing, which is something everybody can use through GSA or regional housing, or regional states, communities. Proposals or quotes have to be publicly advertised. So they should go, not necessarily, hello, I'm Gaz. I'm yelling, Vince, it died. I get to yell at everybody. Hello, hello.
Another one over there in the corner.
Oh, that's his. See, he gets the good one. We'll take this thing apart.
No surgery, no surgery.
Kill it. This one's louder. Hello.
It's not working either. We should have turned it on.
It's on. Hello. Okay. Oh, it sounds better too. I don't have to hold it up here. Okay, what happened to my presentation now? I can't see from beginning. Am I on it? No, from present? I can't see it. Is that?
Yeah, from current slide.
Yay, thank you guys. You don't want to go through the whole thing again. Thank you, sorry about that. Okay, we did this. Public adverts can usually be personally solicited, can also be personally solicited. And again, that doesn't mean you go to one person. It means you directly go to individuals that are vendors that you're aware of, or you have referrals from other tribes, or you have read about that did an amazing job similar to the job that you have, so that you're picking the right person. But you do want to seek as many, wrong one, seek as many bidders as possible. Again, to get the best price for the tribe and the best quality. Can amend or cancel RFPs by amendment. I always did those both email, and I would certified send them to each of the bidders that I had invited for those projects. And can amend or cancel by addendum. Can limit to the list of pre-qualified bidders. So you can request a pre-qualification or send out a pre-qualification packet with, again, questionnaires are good, because then first you see if they can actually fill out a questionnaire. And then you actually get the information that you need and see that it's out there. So micro purchases, I think a lot of you know this already, zip through this. PIH Notice 2009-14, de minimis. I just keep doing that. I need more coffee. De minimis just means small. I think it's so cute that they like de minimis words. We're so formal. Shall not be required to act in accordance with any other applicable competitive procurement rule or procedure. Now, I'm finding that a number of tribes I visit are still using the $3,000 limit for their micro purchases, and I'm seeing at least 3 nods in the audience. You realize that 2 CFR Part 200 did require 3,000, but NAHASDA already had 5,000, and it has superseded the 2 CFR Part 200. Super circular. So if you've got, and if you want to keep that 3,000 just for the reason that it works for your tribe, that's fine. But realize that you can go to 5,000 without having to do all that busy work to buy something. So, and that can be for computers, it could be all kinds of things. I wouldn't say buying computers for everyone because that might be more expensive than that, but if you're just getting a new laptop for somebody, or, yeah, you want to exercise your options of the de minimis rules. So you have to document it with a purchase order, invoice, sales receipt. Can be broken into smaller transactions. Yeah, you can't have 2 computers this month and 2 computers the next month and 2 computers the next month. And I've seen that with a number of tribes that felt they wanted to make sure they were covering themselves well. Well, if you have a master, like you're going out to Lowe's or Home Depot, I don't know who you have here, if you have both of those here, regularly for windows parts, plumbing, electrical. You want to, just do a master contract once every year or every 2 years, and go to them and say, I've got 143 units. I'm estimating blah 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 numbers, and this is how much I want to do, and just do it under the small purchase under 150,000, because that way I don't know about you guys, but my maintenance guys would go off and buy stuff on their own all the time when they needed it in the middle of a job and put it on their Lowe's card, right? And then we go, whoa, who authorized this? Why are we doing this when we have, 120 of those units? Why don't we just get it? And oftentimes they will hold those products for you and then drop ship them as you need them, so you can call them up, and so you don't have to have this huge supply on hand. And if you have a great, huge maintenance area that you can supply everything, it's another story. But yeah, you don't want to go out every month with a $4,000 purchase order for items that you use all the time anyway. Save you a lot of time. Micro purchases clause, you can just put that clause in your procurement policy. Fairly simple. Reduces the burden of complying with the federal procurement process, and Indian preference issues are not required. If you can implement them there, that'd be great. And there's the actual reg. So small purchase method for small things, vehicles. Again, we're going to talk more about vehicles in a little bit. Rehab contractors, professional services, equipment. Small purchase, I'm hitting that again. I don't know what's with me on this thing. Optional method available in procuring under 150,000. So it still has to be competitive, but less formal. You can phone those bids out, you can email those out. Apply along with either bids, quotes, or proposal, and the RFP method. Establish your threshold in the procurement policy. 149, you can have a lower one if you want. Under 150 is the law under 2 CFR Part 200. No public advertising is required, so that's kind of nice. Need to have an adequate number of qualified bidders or proposers, and at a minimum utilize a written checklist in solicitation. So small purchase also you can do by phone, and again, we're talking $149,000, so that's, doing that by phone is kind of nice. We used to have to go through a lot more processes than that. Fax, I don't know why faxes are even working anymore, but I think people are still using them at times, certain places. Website, I get giggles, I like the giggles. Or in person, I don't know, soliciting in person is pretty time consuming, but maybe if you're in a large populated area that has a lot of vendors in proximity, you could go do that. Depends on the dollar amount. If it's conducted by phone, it has to be uniform and consistent for all potential bidders. And again, I write a script. And it's the same group that was doing this every month procurement that I was working with on a technical assistance assignment. And I said, here's what you read this. Oh, but they don't know I've done it every time with them. Read that to every one of them every time. Because sure enough, you'll get somebody that's new that says, oh, we've already done this. We don't have to read this every time. And then later, something comes up and you go, well, no, I read to you that Indian preference is required, and that's why I went, well, no, you didn't tell me that. You told me it was the lowest bid. If you know what you read and you have it documented, you can have one script and put the names on it, just check them off, that you do say the same thing. If they ask you something specific regarding specs or quantities, you should contact the other ones and give them that same question and answer. Again, if it's a small purchase, maybe not, but it's better to protect yourself than hang it out there, because that's where you get in trouble. So anyway, cannot divide large contracts to award multiple small contracts. We kind of touched on that already. And any lack of competition requires HUD's written approval based on 24 CFR 1000.52. And that's really when there is nothing other than a sole source. And the HUD folks are very good about that. As long as you can document that clearly, it just moves right on through. So sealed bids. I'm not crazy about sealed bids myself, but that's another conversation. They can be for materials, equipment, some services, building contractors, construction. They submit their bids and quotes and confirm compliance with the specs so that they understand. And I don't know, I see confirm compliance with the specs, and I've seen a number of contractors take the specs they think they are and use an alternate that does not match the same specs. So you really have to be very fine-tuned on what you want, and especially if it's a specialized equipment, like I'm thinking membrane bioreactor treatment systems, where you're doing sewer treatment disposal. You can't have, there's companies that do these dramatically different and will cost you more in the end for ongoing maintenance. So if they say it's a like kind, make sure it's the like kind. Price is sole factor, and it's a fixed amount, and that's part of why I don't like sealed bids, but again, this is a process a lot of people take. If they're just the lowest price, they might not be the best deal, but they might be too. You award to, again, responsive and responsible. You follow up on that. See that they supply the items that you've requested in your documentation for the RFP, that they don't have any filings with the Consumer Protective Bureau, on SAM, Dun & Bradstreet rating, contractors licensing board of your state, and apply preferences when feasible. Anybody have preferences other than Indian preference? No? Okay. Some people have regional preferences in their county, that they want to keep the money in their counties or municipalities. Sealed bidding is also called bid letting, competitive bid, solicitation of quotes. It is the preferred method, or has been, for conventional construction contracts. Specifications and invitation are very important, being extremely clear and publicly advertised, unless they're under $150,000 is not necessary, but you can still do that if you want to. Pre-qualify contractors for Indian preference. Basically have them send that in as soon as they express their interest, so you don't have to go through that process when you're analyzing all of the quotations that come in. You want to check the debarred suspended contractor list, and the data has to be maintained and periodically updated to reflect the changes for those folks. So for construction, I always recommend a project manual, and I would have an engineer in coordination with the contractor or contractor specialist on staff work on those. You always want all these good things in there when you're doing a major project. You have the invitation itself, which is basically telling them when and where and how and when it's due and how long they can ask questions. And you have your bid forms so they know what they look like, any special conditions, contractor forms, general conditions. I constructed 3 elder foster care homes, and we had to have somebody that really understood Section 504 and ADA so that they knew how to make it safe for our tribal members when they got in there. So that's an example of a special condition you may want in one of your contracts. Technical specs and plans and drawings. So you open with the sealed bids at a specified place, and designated time and place, and the seals are open publicly, so you can invite everybody you want over, have a little party, get out the punch. It's a more formal process for construction projects. And real bid, you read the bids out loud. And I think the one time I did do this, it was my staff. The only ones there. Nobody was really interested in hearing these bids. Hold all bids under advertisement, no decision, or advisement, so you don't necessarily have to make a decision, even if with the lowest bid at that point. You're just reading them out. And you can extend the opening by addendum. What's that?
That's what you sound like to me, Ted.
I sound like the Maytag man. Oh, wow, that's scary. My voice is low, but it's not that low.
No, I'm not.
I'm kidding you.
He said nobody came.
Oh, nobody came. Oh. Yeah, they're a poor lonely Maytag repairman. Oh, I forgot those commercials. So proposals include a list of evaluation factors and their relative importance. So I always recommend a point scale that you do ahead of time. That is not something you just say they're all equal, because they never should be. You've got to have something that's more important to you in these projects, or you wouldn't be spending your time and money working on them. So evaluation factors, solicitation is a request for proposals. And I don't know what CTAB 5 is, so I'm skipping that one. Competitive proposals, these are the ones I like. Can be used to procure architects, accountants, attorneys, manufactured housing developments, computer systems, and everything else. Large items. Specs may not be fully prescribed. Sometimes you want to tell them, here's the project, how would you do it? And sometimes you can get better ideas than you trying to do it yourself. So that's something to think about. It's letting go of control, which I know is hard for all of us. That you can, if you come up with something better, it's worth it. So turnkey development construction, they build it, they give you the key when they're done. Goods and bads to that too. Acquisition of pre-built housing. So if somebody built a whole development and then they went bankrupt, sometimes you can get a steal on those. Or you can have them just do that and then pay them. So comparing proposals, and I like this one, Jonathan Apples to Macintosh Apples, not Jonathan Apples to Jonathan Apples. You want to make sure you're not having the identical proposals from these competitive proposals, that they're coming up with their own ideas on the apples, not horse apples. Those are another giggle. Competitive proposals, price is not the only factor. NAHASDA allows the price not to be a factor in certain architect engineering contracts, notably CMGC, another one, 2 CFR 300-20D5, but normally it's not recommended. I'll plead the fifth on that last line. Solicitation of proposals, you advertise publicly. There's less specs, because again, you're wanting them to tell you how they're going to do it. Often, but not always, includes contract form. I think it always should. Because if they don't like the contract form and you get to the contracting phase, you've already lost your second and third contractors. So selection criteria always with a point scale, and obviously always applicable preferences. So utilizing that point system, you want to use a range of points. This is really getting to the panel where they're actually reviewing the proposals. You want to have knowledgeable evaluators. And that is not always our leadership. I always like to have at least one person in our leadership on, but in the past I had at least one board member in one of my projects who I thought knew a fair amount, because he had been involved in a number of our housing projects as a recipient and had been on the board a number of years, and I thought he knew contracting and construction. However, it was clear the reading of the actual proposals and the analysis and ratings that individual gave were way out of the professionals of the other three members of the team. And it caused some consternation and some challenges. So I urge you, if you're going to have a tribal counselor or board person on your panels, that you make sure that they have some background in construction, that they understand the various aspects so that they can rate those appropriately.
Like when we ask our contractors to give us the specs, can we give them like a maximum amount that they can give us for an estimate to do a project, or do we let them do everything and submit it to us?
If you give them a maximum, you're giving away the store. They're gonna go to the maximum every time. Show me the money. Hey, the tribe just told me how much I could spend, hot dang.
Right.
And then you might not get your dollar's worth. And you want them to compete. You want them to go for your for your job. And that's the concept of the cost analysis and why you don't let that out, which we were talking about a little earlier. It's confidential, it's only with the top people, it isn't shared by anybody, it isn't even shared to the board or council. You can give them a range that you think it will be, but when you get the actual bids, and oftentimes I renegotiated a lot of those contracts after I got the RFPs when we had, it could have been everything from amendments, where we found a difficulty in the site prep or a difficulty in the construction procedure or materials that weren't available that we had to alter. So that's going to raise it up anyway with change orders. But yeah, good question. Good question. So avoid politics. I love that one. Good luck with that in any country, but hey, I like it. Avoid politics. That's part of why I think it's really great to have a housing board instead of a council, because the board should be hopefully knowledgeable about housing and construction and have some understanding of the processes and not necessarily have political connections that could get in the way. Verify and evaluate preferences. So here's example criteria, and I don't think this is bad, and it can be everywhere. I mean, this has evaluation of performance by existing and former clients. If this is me, I'd up that to like 30, because that's where I find the biggest flaws in RFPs proposals that I've received. Because they'll have all these great things to do and show, mention projects, but then when you call the references, they're bad references, or they aren't listing all the projects that they would have done. So, but it's entirely up to you. But you need to use some kind of criteria like this. This isn't a bad one. I always did much higher, higher points for Indian preference. Never do 0 on either of those. But that's what the contractor's going to do in their contracting process. So you want open, evaluate. You always want to open them at the same time. It's not a public opening. Inventory each proposal. I would write down basically the dollar amount they came up with, what methods they were using, what processes they had, and not make a decision. And evaluate, often using that point scale. So what I would do is I would give that point scale to each of the raters. All 4 of us would get the exact same pile, a multiple copy of the exact same thing. And I'd give them a rating sheet for each one. And they'd go through, okay, is there a cover letter? I mean, it's basic. But you can tell a lot by somebody if they read a cover letter or not, how professional they are and what they know. And again, I'm not talking about a small contract, I'm talking about these big contracts. I mean, if they miss out something like a cover letter, which is 10 points, they're gonna miss out stuff on the construction project when they're in the middle of it. So, inventory, okay, so using point scale. Specifically determine if the individuals and entities are qualified to receive Indian preference, obviously. Do not rely on determinations and certifications made by others. So you want to have that proof of Indian blood. You want to have some kind of corporate or business structure that shows how much of the business is owned by the tribal member. You want to evidence that they are in control, that they're either the chair of the board of whatever, the leader, not some silent partner. Common fronting practices, disguise how little profit tribe or member receives. Indian tribe or member appears as 51% owner, but management control are with the non-Indian. And less than truthful in explaining resources that each owner brings to entity. In the multi-day program at this point, I would hand you guys all out an example and you would analyze it, and it's actually really fun to find the stuff that you see in there, but we're not very nice. Yes, ma'am?
That 51%, what if the controlling party is a tribal member, but they have their spouse do it?
Okay, so the question was that 51%, if the contractor says they're 51%, but it's actually their spouse?
Yes, that's not a tribal.
Is the spouse part of the construction business? If they're one of the partners or one of the owners?
Well, he's the person who does all
As long as she's doing 51%. And again, you have to see that both by the Indian blood, as well as by what are they controlling, what is their title with the business.
But you're saying doing, she's not doing anything.
She has to do something. Then she's not controlling the business and it's not Indian owned. She's a figurehead over here.
Everyone is a spouse.
Spouse is a spouse. That doesn't, we're talking about business here, not a marriage.
No, I would. Still, no,
So yeah, And they do, but a lot of times that spouse is actively involved in the corporation, and as long as it has to be 51% control. So that person, it has to be evidence that they make decisions, they sign contracts. What, Cheryl?
I said they do the payroll, or they can fire and hire.
They do the payroll, hire and fire, yeah, all that stuff is what runs the business. And if they're not doing it, they're not giving that to a Native American owned and controlled firm. And that's NAHASDA requirement. Yeah, basically it's a cover-up. I mean, it's a loving one because it's your spouse, but it's, I'd make her the lead, but then I'd want to be the lead anyway if I were her, so.
You're a bossy one.
I'm a bossy one, darn right. How you get things done, god darn it. You don't listen to Cheryl talking up here. Okay. So be prepared to further explain to anyone. Did that answer your question? Yeah, okay. Be prepared, yeah, Rupert or divorce. Be prepared to provide further explanation to anyone you disqualify, and you want to be tactful with this, but you also want to be direct. I called your references, and one of them said you dropped the job, you never came back. They called you multiple times. I'm sorry, that's not going to fly with me. And I have had those. And I mean, you do have to be polite and politically correct. You don't want to say, you're a bozo, you're screwed up. But basically they were. So yeah, you just need to, be straight with them. And hopefully they will change that and improve their performance in construction. We're doing good. So record the procurement decision once you've made it. And again, what you do is you have all these rating sheets, and then what I would do is I personally would take all the rating sheets, and except mine, I'd give mine to someone else, and add up all the scores and do a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet with the company, which person rated it, what the scores were for each one and totals for each one, and then you do an analysis. Then you sit down. You don't want to do this together. You never want to go through these contracts together, or proposals, excuse me, because you will sway each other with each other's different expertise, and you want that diversity of expertise analyzing these proposals. You don't want to have it all be your staff. You want to have it be people that are invested and professional and understand the process of whatever that contract is for. And that's not always easy, but you've got to try. Make brief decision statement in writing as to why you chose that person. That could be as simple as they had the most experience in the field and the most lengthy employment crew. Been with them the longest. I mean, and again, who knows if that would be right or not, but be prepared further to provide further explanation to anyone you disqualify. Again, and the other thing I get a lot is, are you going to tell me what the bid actually was? Put to the one that won. Once I tell the other ones they're not getting it? No. Because then they are have inside knowledge on what the amount we would go to, and yeah, I just refuse. And some contractors get really huffy. It's like, well, it was a bid process. I should know. No, you should know. None of your dang business. Try to do whatever they want.
Do you select one and an alternate? Should something happen at that time?
Do I select one or an alternate?
One and an alternate? The next one in line?
No,
No?
because the
Never?
first one always took it. For me.
You've never had a backup?
But there's always a 1, 2, 3, 4, and you go into negotiations. But no, I never had a negotiation fallout. I'm fortunate, I guess. I'm out of 9 fairly large projects. So, be prepared to provide. Okay, explain to any disqualified party that they may still submit a bid or proposal, which seems like I was like, okay, I guess you can, but why? And it could. I'm in my mind that would be before the closing date. And disqualified may be that the Indian preference wife. I looked at that, and that Indian preference didn't come in, and maybe it would require an Indian preference, at least for employees on the crew, if not the ownership.
I've disqualified somebody because I made the mistake of making a bid opening at 3 o'clock and didn't factor in school buses.
Okay, I'm gonna have you tell people this.
I said I disqualified somebody because I made the mistake of a 3 o'clock bid opening and didn't factor in school buses. And one of the guys came in 4 minutes after the bid closed. Ouch. It was my fault. I should have never done that time of day, but I was new.
You know,
It was the process. It was weeks out, but
Excuse me.
They do.
Yeah, you
they-
snooze, you lose.
Excuse me.
They run in the door at
Yes,
the last
they do,
minute.
they
That's
do. I've had FedEx even run in the door for
Yeah.
me.
They run right back out too.
Okay, did everybody hear that? Can't tell in the back? They're not nodding or shaking their heads, so I guess they heard that. Thank you, Cheryl. But yeah, if you have that time, that is impossible, especially if it's a tribal member, then you're really on the line for it. It was 3 o'clock, 3:05, sorry, 3:05. And it isn't fair to everybody else if you don't stick to that 3 o'clock time. If that's what you have put in the solicitation and everywhere else, yeah. Explain to any disqualified partner, they still may submit a bid, we got that. Reserve the right to reconsider. Reserve the right to disqualify anyone. Cheryl could have said, okay, we're gonna redo these bids in a week and go at 3:30, and you guys, I wouldn't make a practice of that, because then it just makes you look stupid, unfortunately. And when we're stupid, we don't wanna share. Keep that to ourselves. We all do stupid things once in a while. So you can reserve the right to disqualify and add provisions for termination if the entity loses its Indian ownership or control during the contract period. And I'm not sure what kind of provisions those would look like. That sounds like a real conundrum to me. So Indian preference, we know this stuff. I'm gonna skip. Two-stage method for Indian preference. Solicit statements of intent from Indian-owned and controlled entities, and if two or more are received from qualified entities, then solicit bid proposals from Indian-owned and controlled entities only. Otherwise, solicit bids proposals from all entities using your established method of applying Indian preference. And there's a selection method process that you guys can use or not use. Awarding a contract, you know all this, we've talked about it, responsive and responsible, compare price analysis, comply with the preferences, carefully scrutinize and document everything in that process. Apply the standards evenly, consistently among those that are bidding. Do not negotiate, and that's the other reason I don't like sealed bids, because I like to negotiate. Can reject any and all bids for good reason. And award of the contract. You can reject any and all proposals for sound and documented reason. They didn't submit any Indian preference anything. They didn't even submit something saying, I do not claim Indian preference. Again, if they're really gold in every other way, you'd probably, you wouldn't make it, you just, not give them the points for that. But you should at least say, I know for myself and some other groups, we will say, I don't claim Indian preference, but I do claim women-owned business, solely owned women business. But at least that way you've got something from them. Negotiations of a contract are allowed. Of course, the prior slide said you can't negotiate. Like I said, I don't like that slide. Cost or price analysis is always required. And again, these are moving on. Execution of the progress, notice to proceed. I think a number of these forms are in these forms. There's a pretty good, where is it? I had a bunch of forms here. I think it's, here we go. The Handbook 7460.8, Revision 2. I think a bunch of you might have these. There are a number of forms in there. And I believe there's a notice to proceed. Among others, there's guidelines for conducting a cost analysis in that document on page 37. Determination of contractor responsibility forms. And these are old forms related technically to public housing. But, and I would have downloaded the whole book, but it's like 300 and some pages. But you can go on to the website and put this on your desktop and pop these up, and you can put them in Word, and then just tribalize them again. Make it yours, put your name on it. There's checklists for the procurement in there. That's the procurement file checklist. Real basic. Don't reinvent the wheel. It's not a lot of work. You just do it. I would frankly give it to my procurement person and have them tweak it to make it work for you, but always review that and make sure they've covered everything. So, and all this stuff. Contracts of sale used for manufacturing, non-competitive method, can be used only when other methods are infeasible. When is another method infeasible? Anybody? Contracting? Specialized jobs? Okay, maybe when there's a really closed market, There's only maybe 3 companies in the United States that do that kind of work. And I found that with the membrane bioreactor treatment system, because we didn't have sewer access and we needed something, and they are standalone treatment systems, and there were like 3 companies, if that. And they were pretty close. They knew they could compete. So other methods weren't feasible. Like we couldn't put in a sewer system because we didn't have any waste treatment area to put it to. In extraordinary situations, often requires special approval from HUD, and 2 CFR 200.324 has more information on that. Non-competitive when the item or service is only available from a sole source. When there's an emergency, when HUD awards it, oftentimes that can be after disasters, after Katrina and other, one up your way? Sandy, yes. There were a lot of HUD authorizations for special programs at that point, and many of them were for competition. After solicitation of a number of sources, competition was determined to be inadequate. You want to get competitive. So to me, the non-competitive method, I use this most of my construction contracts, and that's because I did design build and contract management, design build contract management, CMDC. I don't know if any of you use design build process. It's a pretty unique animal. Basically, it brings the team together prior to actually starting the construction. I've got my cheat sheet because I know this, but it's easier to read it. It's a contract management process that utilizes integrating a team approach from the beginning, and it applies modern management techniques to the planning, design, and construction of a project. And the ones I did, I think were terrifically effective. And again, you can't do this because you're hiring a team. We hired the engineering company, the architect, and the general contractor at the same time. And they had to agree with one another and work together through the entire process, from the design to the closing of the opening of the project. And what it did was first they're working together from the beginning, so you're not going into an architect change orders and the engineers. Sometimes the engineers and architects don't talk. Has any of you had this? You come up to this, and, oh, that's a really cool feature, but the wall won't hold up. And it happens if you have these separate individuals and they may not understand the science. The other thing is you can build in incentives that you will give them money, additional funds like 50 grand for every 100,000 that they find that they can save in the construction of the project. And wow, all of a sudden they are incented to reduce the cost of your project because they make money. But you save money because you're saving 50 grand on a project that probably will be amazing, unique components that weren't thought of before. So it's really an interesting process, especially having the engineer and architects work together, because they kind of have different brain sets. Yes, ma'am.
We having experienced Hurricane Matthew, we had a requirement. The Lumbee tribe in our community has experienced Hurricane Matthew, and one of the tribal properties is our Indian Cultural Center, and the dam overflowed, and so there's stabilization issues with the dam. One of the things that is going to be required now to do that work is to hire a dam engineer.
Damn engineer. Sorry, I couldn't help it.
But this is, again, the first time I've had to do this, so it's a unique process. So we put out an RFQ, and so we're going through this right now. We're waiting for the SOQs to come in, the packets to come in now. So.
Do you have an engineer help you with the specs on what you want?
Actually, FEMA provided the scope of work for us.
Excellent.
And so we didn't have to develop that on our own. But that's an example.
Yeah. Any other specialized examples that folks have had to deal with? But they do come up, and you can use cultural examples for that matter. You know, if it has to do with your tribe and making it specific for your
For her
tribe.
example, if she can only get one. Did you ever know what happens? For her example, if she's only able to get one contractor, then she just needs to get that approved through HUD then. That she tried and she was only able to get one contractor because
Correct, and there does have to be a series of documentation that shows that they have searched and, you know, you want to give HUD
Yeah.
the easy way to say yes, the EWONAP staff. So, yes, exactly right, thank you. Okay. So negotiate with a single source. So once you do that, and in this case, it was a single source contractor and a single source engineer and a single source architect for my job. And unfortunately, none of them had Indian preference because this was a very large job, unfortunately. Cost analysis is still required, of course, on everything. And that's what they require, so we really covered this. Why reasons award can't be made through competition, so very well stated there. So those are where the requirements are and in your policy, working with bidders, advertising an RFP. You always want to have a date range for questions from bidders. I always did mine 10 days, it closed 10 days before the actual due date of the contract. And I would always give at least 3 weeks, if not 4, for these larger contracts. If it's a smaller contract, you can do less than that. And when you get it, I always have them have to submit those questions by email. Only email. And actually, one of them had a hard time with that, but his wife had an email. So, you know, because with a small contractor, sometimes they aren't real savvy with the techno stuff. And when you get that question, what are the specifications for the pipe width on the lateral, whatever, okay? 6 to 8 inches, depending on the flow and the direction, whatever, right? So you have a response. You send that response to every single one of the bidders and the question, so that everybody gets the same information. You don't want to just take that question and answer it to that one person, because then you're not getting your bang for the buck and you're not giving those other contractors a fair chance because they didn't think of the question, okay? And that goes right up to that 10th day or 7th day or 5 days before the opening, because they have to really look at how they do their things differently, and you want them competing, and if you're giving one information that you're not giving the rest of them, it's just not fair. So that's one thing I've noticed a lot of folks don't necessarily do that, and I think it's a really good idea. Respond to submitted questions to all bidders, there you go. Keep a log of the bidder questions and the firms. They're often more serious bidders, the ones that ask the questions. And I found that to be true as well. They're the ones that seem to really know their stuff. Have the question time period close a week or more prior to the due date of the proposal. Managing RFPs, make sure there's sufficient specs, so all bidders are estimating on the same items. And again, if you don't have an engineer or a contractor development, construction development person, it's worth its weight in gold to have these specs very clear. Someone that really understands what the sizes and quality of materials are. What will work in your area. My area had a rainforest, or the edge of rainforest, so we had 120 inches of rain and hurling, flooding conditions, and so I put 100-mile-per-hour roofs on all my new construction and hardy plank on the sidings, so that they would last a long time and be able to be durable through that weather conditions. And I had some folks on council say we don't need that fancy materials for Indian housing. I'm glad he was the minority, because I went ahead and built them that way there, and they're still holding up wonderfully. So provide a time window for all bidders to ask for questions or clarifications. We already covered that. Require background resumes on all professional staff who will work on the job. And I always like to have references for all professional staff who work on the job as well. And ask for a minimum of 3 references. Some of the larger firms will give you like 28, so you just gotta really want to check all of them. You might want to check the ones that have the most similar project to the type that you're bidding. So you want to have a panel review the proposals. We talked about this already separately, then meet and compare notes. Generally, you will I've always come up with an agreement when you have that kind of process, because you've all rated them, and even if one person rated them completely different than the others, you average it all out and it's what the max, and that's why I recommend it at least 4 individuals that you have on that panel, and make sure they understand whatever the process is for the item that you're procuring. You want to mix up the review panel with experts in various fields: engineer, construction, development management, housing director, technical folks, and hopefully some leadership. Cooperative purchasing, this is the fun part. Anybody use GSA? Yes, I got two little hands. I have to be honest, I didn't use GSA for my housing authority, but my tribe used it for a number of purchases, so I got to know it through my tribe. Intergovernmental procurement or joint purchasing. There are a number of state government cooperatives, and I've got a lot of these now are just going to be slides where I'm going to zip through that you guys can either look at or not, or check with your state. GSA's e-buy, government excess, surplus, and property acquisition. There's all kinds of cool stuff. So I'm going to go through these slides. It was actually a lot easier than I thought. I'm starting to have fun bidding on some cars and stuff myself. Actually, a truck. I'm looking for a work truck. Cooperative purchasing can really be pretty much anything. Materials, equipment, and some services. I would not go out to bid for a major construction contract through GSA. However, you actually could if you wanted to. I wouldn't recommend it. Procurement requirements. So you don't have to do any of the procurement requirements when you use GSA. And generally, at least for ours, for the Oregon State one that I looked at and signed up on, some of them will ask for $2,000 if you're a government municipality as a license for the year to use the services. Other ones you can go free. GSA doesn't charge, I don't think, anything. But some of the states, I know the state of Oregon had that $2,000 fee annually for tribes and other governments. It's an excellent option to lease vehicles for high annual mileage. So if you're doing a lot of traveling, you have a lot of areas, you have one vehicle, you go to trainings like this and load up. That's really a great idea, especially for the leasing. Fuel costs and all repairs are provided by GSA during the term of the lease. I wonder why we always had to turn our cars into this other place to have the oil changed, right? I mean, they do fuel and repairs for your vehicles, yes.
We tried to lease through GSA and they won't let housing lease.
You have to have either be a housing authority or the tribe has to do a resolution authorizing. What state are you in? Wisconsin?
But we tried to go to
So you tried to go through GSA? Oh, okay.
We've heard something similar. HACD, we're a nonprofit.
Thank you.
Yes, we've heard something similar in Wisconsin that housing, and they consider us even like a housing, we're not a housing department, but the Ho-Chunk Nation, like IHS or our Office of Environmental Health, and there are other tribal departments that have GSA, but since we're a nonprofit, they wouldn't let our agency have GSA vehicles.
You have to be a government.
Yeah, you have to be a government entity. Although I understood individuals could sign up too, because I was able to sign in. I haven't bought anything yet, but
Well, private now.
Oh, okay.
You have to be a government.
Okay.
Private individual.
But tribal governments are eligible, because they actually have a whole webpage on here, which I'm going to show you guys. So I'm not sure, are you in the same?
Governments, but not TDHEs, even with a resolution, are not eligible.
Without TDHEs, which is probably why mine was a TDHE. But you can ask the tribe to purchase it for you, would be the other thing. So I was hearing it. It has to be the tribal government. I believe our tribal government relegated it, their authority to us, but I don't know if they told you to say that. Anyway, fuel costs and repairs. So best option if you have a lot of mileage on the car. So purchasing vehicles through GSA. It's my procurement manager at Grand Run was giving me tips on this, and he said it's best for the lower mileage vehicles because they're nice. They're 3-4 years old. You'll see some pictures I have of some of the procurement vehicles and construction equipment that they have. Things like maintenance vans, crew cabs, and fleet cars. They have really good residual value. You could actually sell them if you wanted to, but they have fairly low mileage and they're in good condition. So that's a nice way to buy vehicles. And this is the variety of GSA programs: vehicle leasing, used government property, purchase card, travel cards, federal supply schedules, and information technology. So I found the website fairly user-friendly once I started figuring out where to click on. Yeah, got some nods again. They sell 30,000 to 40,000 cars annually, which kind of blew my mind. And we had purchased at least a van and a car for the housing authority through the tribe. I would have to ask Larry for that, but you'll see some pictures and they're very, very affordable in here. So you would click on the browse category and you go by location and GSA fleet vehicles and trucks. So there's a little pick list you can draw down. Where, Wilma? Wilma! I lost my Wilma. Thank you. I think we had another one.
I love that. No, but my experience working with their website is once you gotta submit an email and a password, and you gotta give them 24 hours, they either accept you or not, and they will kick back to your email to let you know if you gotta make a change in either or in order you to go further in. Because I've worked with them personally, and they've been awful friendly with me when I worked with the tribe doing the ambulances.
Okay.
But that is a criteria that they have to go by.
And they had me do that too. I don't know if everybody heard, or when you first sign in, especially for the bidding for auctions, is what you're talking about? Yeah, and that's what we're gonna show you some sheets on. They do ask your email address. They don't ask for a whole bunch of information, though. I was kind of surprised. And then they get back to you in 24 hours. So you can buy their card. You get automatic notifications, like, yep.
Yeah.
And of types of vehicles and equipment you're seeking. For some reason, I keep getting all these like fancy cars. I think because of the first search I did, I wanted to look at fleet vehicles, right? So you're gonna see my car choice in here, you guys. I'm sure you'll love this, right? We're doing. So authorized users, Native American tribes, and TDHE tribal housing departments. I think this is for really the full range of services, because I believe individuals can go out and buy, because they have different bid amounts on these auctions, that you can see how many people have bid and what the current bid is on those and what location it's in case you want to go to Hawaii to pick up your vehicles. So GSA offers a range of services for tribes, from surplus property donations to vehicle purchases, and tribes can use the page to receive notices for auctions that we're talking about. So I'll show you what those are. The federal supply schedules are pre-negotiated contracts. But once again, you don't have to do all your procurement efforts. You can just not do the procurement part because they're doing it for you. They offer various pricing for a number of different things, dozens of things. We'll see in a minute. Environmental, they do the environmental, there's a warranty that's involved. They deliver, and there's 16,000 of those contracts in place. So that's a lot of contracting that our federal taxes are paying for anyway, so as a tribe, use it, let them do the work. So why use them is because you can save money, obviously, big choice. Costs and time, there's you don't have to deal with the competition. Access to the World Wide Web to buy things through them. Meet Indian preference, because they pull up tribal firms so that you can use them for your purchasing if they're applicable to what you're looking for. And searches are available for Native-owned enterprises. So that sure sounds like a nonprofit. I'm not sure why that wouldn't work for that lady. So what services are covered? Professional audit. I don't think I'd want to get my audit from them, but environmental assessments, architects, legal. There aren't that many people that do Indian housing audits. So here's what the main page looks like.
You know that HUD doesn't seem to think that, and we're getting a lot of findings in our area saying you're
HUD doesn't think there's any
using the
preference?
auditor for too long of a period.
Oh, the auditors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's my HUD guy? Using the HUD auditor for too long a period? So like you need to go out and re-advertise?
Yeah. What do you consider, how many years? Does that consider 5 years? How long? How
Yeah, Mark's back there. I don't know if he's dying to answer this question here. Everybody wants Mark to answer.
Yeah, Mark.
Do we have to go out for audit, procurement? More often than not, I'm hearing it's been a finding for some tribes. They're using them for too long a periods or too often. Does that make sense?
It's not him, it's his guys.
It's a concern if, you hear me? Okay, it's a concern if you keep using the same person over and over and over and over. And, you know, it's happened in a couple places where that auditing firm never finds a problem, but then when we come to monitor, we find a lot of problems. They're probably not doing a very good job, and you should consider, because the auditor's to help you to avoid having findings. So if they're not being thorough, they're not really helping.
Can we define concern?
So that's why occasionally it might behoove you to change auditing firm.
Hang on, it's on, just go back.
Yeah, Mark, Leonard Walker here. Hey, when you say a concern as opposed to a mandatory or a rule, how would you define that?
I'll have Will answer that one.
Infamous Will.
Okay, a finding, a finding is a statutory or regulatory violation, right? Point
A little
blank,
closer to your mouth.
cut and clear.
There you go.
A concern is something that we're concerned about. Like say, you have a number of auditors in your area available. Say you have 10 auditing firms that work with Native American programs or whatever, right, or tribes or TDHEs, okay? And you've been using the same one for the last 8 years, right? So what you're doing is in fact sole sourcing. We'll look and we'll see that you haven't competed this, procurement or contract or whatever it is that you're acquiring this auditor, okay? So what we'll say in the beginning is we'll say, okay, there's no regulatory violation here, there's no statutory violation here, but it is a concern. It's something that you might want to take a look at, right? You might want to compete this contract the next time around, because if you don't, then that becomes a procurement finding, because you have this continuing contract that you are in fact sole sourcing. So that's the difference between finding, which is just cut and dry, you violated a regulation or statute, and a concern. Concern is kind of like a warning that may lead to a finding later.
I was looking for a clear definition.
And you could potentially go out to bid and it end up being a sole source. Again, we talked about the areas where you're remote and there's only so many vendors that want to drive 280 miles to your reservation to do an audit. But you need to document that and qualify it so that the HUD folks are happy that your concern is our concern.
And also in situations.
Can't hear you, man.
Right? Like say for example.
Oh, wait. Everybody gotta hear you.
It's also situation dependent. If you're a very, very remote tribe and there's only one or two auditors available, and one auditor doesn't want to work with you, and you've been using the same one for 15 years, you won't hear anything from us because we realize that that is the only auditor that's willing to work with you. So you've been using them for 15 years and you'll probably continue to use them for 15 more. So it's really situation dependent, okay?
The other thing I found with new auditors is we unfortunately use the big five, or now big three, I don't know, accounting systems because we were kind of large tribe. And they didn't know anything about Indian country. And then they send new interns out every year that are just learning, and they have to learn you train the auditors what Indian housing's about. It's crazy making. I see a lot of nods out there. So I totally understand, but at the same time, technically, you need to go out there. I would say at least every 5 years, just to find out maybe there is another one out there nearby that you don't know about yet. And I think I was hearing 3 back there, but there's no set number of years, correct? For that, okay. You just want to have it in your process to double check that you're getting the best deal. So back to GSA schedules. So at the bottom of this page, there's a pick list, and that looks like that. I mean, it doesn't look just like that because I cut and pasted it. Okay, I lied. It's supposed to be a pick list. So tribes get savings, flexibility and choice, fairly short lead times to get the products, transparency, because again, GSA is doing all the work, control of the procurement, lower administrative costs, and reduce inventories. And it does sound like you have to go through the tribe as a tribal government because they primarily work with tribal governments with most of this.
And you can get your billing right through them by email or go directly to the site and print it off.
You can get your billing rate?
You can get, when you lease something through them, you can get your billing right from their site.
Great,
Just to let anybody know.
that's helpful. So for various professional
Yeah,
areas,
let's
you
say
can get the rates?
We leased a dirt truck, like you're looking for.
Could you give her the, I know you don't want to talk to me, Jeff, but we can't all hear you now.
If like you're leasing a vehicle through them and they did accept your username and password, you can go back in under your own name and password and get your bill off their site instead of waiting it to come in the mail and everything. You don't need the invoice number, you just go in and look for your billing cycle and what month you're looking for, and they'll show you your history.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So e-buy is an online request for quotes, so it's an RFQ electronically, and it authorizes buyers to obtain quotes and issues orders for products and services offered by sellers in the GSA Multiple Award Schedules program. I think these are most effective with things like major quantity appliance purchases. It could be doors, screen doors. I know for me, we've gone through screen doors like crazy. I don't know why they all get holes and knocked off or parked next to the house, but they do. When the kids climb out the windows, yeah, they never do that, right? Okay. So use eBay for services. You tell what I do. Quantity or high dollar purchases where you're seeking a discount from contract pricing, purchases with complex requirements, determining sources of supply, and receiving quotes on blanket purchase agreements. And the complex requirements, again, can be all over the map if you don't know what kind of specs you need for your bulldozer, or for if buying 3 maintenance lawnmowers, rider mowers for your maintenance guys to beat the crud out of, like mine always do. Yeah, they can help you with that. So again, here's the main web page when you go in. And let's see if the bottom of the page, yay, I got the pick list this time. So at the bottom of the page, you go down there and there's Native American tribes right on there. And you click on that baby. And hopefully if you're a department of the tribe, your tribe will allow you to do this or through their procurement division or delegate that you're one of the approved purchasers.
Can you go back to that slide?
You bet.
Look at what's at the top.
Resources for.
No, citizens and consumers. So in this system, you're actually competing against citizens.
So that's why I got signed
Every
in.
citizen can go in here. It's a publicly paid for things with public funds, so citizens are open to compete in here as well. So a lot of times you're competing against the used car dealership downtown, because he's going in as a citizen to buy 5 vehicles or whatever. So, yeah.
It depends on the location too, how many of those are doing that, if they want to drive, 2,000 miles across the country. But thank you for pointing that. There is competition. So if you click on that Native American Tribes link, you come to this Native American Tribes page, and it does talk about the ranges of services, how to get started, real property transfer, buying and selling land. How about that through GSA? Vehicle sales, helping customers, and there's a phone line directly that you can call them if you have questions. So and it's targeted to Native American tribes. So I strongly encourage you, if you haven't looked at it, to look at it. You can just hit www.gsa, and I just hit gsa.gov, and my Google engine pops right out. So like that. All right. Homepage introduces a variety of services and products, and the boxes on the lower page have portions. Click on news, upcoming events, and etc. So navigating the website, there's an Explore link that will let you click on other links to find products, supplies, services at discounted pricing. And eTools link will also offer online services to research, buy, lease, sales, and more. Travel tools, and I find these, usually I just go into HUD website and do GS, per diem, and I don't know why I go through 4 clicks, but you can go right to the second page. You go to, it has a per diem for any city, any state. It has the hotel, the meals. I also have to go to the per diem, and then I go to the mileage, and then I go to the, no, you don't have to do that. This is actually a really quick tool for that. Even if you don't use it for anything else, it's been really helpful to me, and I was kind of surprised. So here's making traveling is what that page looks like. So basically you just, have all these options of lists. You can click on any of these, per diem, and then per diem will pop up. Mileage in between points of travel. hotels, airfares. You put in your state and your whatever else. So here I went ahead and plugged in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in there, and there's all the hotel rates and the meals and entertainment. And then you can click back to that thing and get the 75% of the first and last day, all that stuff that I sit and calculate with my calculator like a dope. That you can get right here. So here are the GSA schedules. There's a bunch of them. And I would go into, I'm trying to think which one I went into next year. I went into the purchasing, I believe, the acquisition gateway. So this is where you initially go to find all these things. And you can see products and services, all kinds of different disposition of property. So I wanted to go to Gsa Auctions because I'm always looking for construction equipment because my projects always need construction equipment. So this pops you to Gsa Advantage and Shop Now, the fun stuff. So I like looking for good things. So you see here, aircraft fixed wing, I don't know if you, yeah, Rolex. That's a NAHASDA approved watch, I'm sure of that. So what you can do here is you grab.
Sure the coffee breaks are right?
Is you browse by browse by category. So I wanted construction equipment. So because that's that. But there's all kinds of different things. I don't know if you can see them all here. There's motorcycles and bicycles, office equipment and supplies, photographic, tractors, manufactured housing, construction equipment, boats and marine, aircraft parts. Anyway, I went on construction equipment because that's what I tended to look for the most. We got a bunch of interesting stuff on here. There's a Kubota mower. As soon as I saw that, I thought of my guys because they were always trashing our Kubota mowers right and left, man. And having to fix them. There's the tractors. So, a bulldozer. That's what I need to scare tribal council. Nobody laughed. Oh man. Okay, fine. So here's what the next screen would look like. You pop in there, and you can see that there's a Kubota mower, and it actually looks in pretty good shape except for the flat tire. It talks about it's in Tupelo, Mississippi, and the current bid is $2,200. Was $2,200. There were 4 bidders going for that, and this is 4 hours. Obviously, it was over last month. But you have all this information, and you can just go in and click on that and place a bid. You think it's a decent price. You can Google stuff or Craigslist stuff and see what things are going for, whatever works. But it gives you a lot of information. This is a 2010 Kubota, usually 830 hours, which is not bad. Repairs required of parts missing or broken. Okay, want to know about that, but generally it's going to be a lot cheaper than buying a brand new one. And here's my bulldozer. I like the other picture better. I wanted to see the actual bulldozer. But what you can do when you're in there is click on these. There's what we're looking at, and then there's a side view of the dozer, front, other side, back. So you really get some decent deals on this equipment. Only has 6 hours and 53 minutes. I mean, what's wrong with that? That one was $14,456, and I'm sure it went up. They had 6 bidders at that point. But if you're doing heavy construction, that's a hell of a deal for a dozer. I mean, it really is. So here we have a snowplow. I know there's a number of us that use snowplows in this area. We got some Michiganders, and I don't think there's any Minnesotans here, but
yeah.
Yep. And road grader. So there's another one. And again, you have to go pick these up. You can zip up to Alaska, pick up a snowplow. That's why it's such a good deal. So tractors, wheeled. So you can see there's all kinds of equipment, especially for equipment if you have a force account and you want to have equipment for that force account.
Is there also a page where there's donated stuff for tribes?
There is it did say a donated page. I can look through that and double check on it. I didn't go do it for this presentation because I knew we wouldn't have a lot of time. But yeah, that first page had the donation.
I know my tribe picked up equipment, but they had to go to Maine to pick it up, and I think it was free.
So Cheryl got free equipment. Yeah, and I think we actually got some sheds for free too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a lot of stuff out there. So this is how you would sign in. This is what she was talking about as far as signing as an individual. I've got Joe Blow with the Petunia Tribe on there. I wasn't going to put mine on there because you guys all harassed me, even though it's on the last slide anyway. What's your pet's name? Bob. First name Bob, Rainrunner in Florida. other government. So it's pretty easy, and that's it. You click on that register and you're in. And then because I have put in some stuff looking for fleet vehicles, here's an idea of fleet vehicles. So, and you can see a lot of them are fairly new. Here's a 2014, 2014, 2014. Oh, now that's my kind of car. See that Dodge Charger? I rent those when I can. They are fun. So of course, what did I do? Look, there's the Dodge Charger. And for a 2014 Dodge Charger, 11.6, that's great. It's actually great, and that's a pretty sweet ride looking. I don't even see the dent on it. How many miles has it got? It doesn't say on that one. But if you had clicked on the whole thing, it would give you the mileage as well. But and work trucks, that's the other thing I'm always looking for, because I kayak and do a bunch of other outdoorsy type things and yard stuff that I got to haul. So here's all kinds of work trucks. There's Ford, Chevys. I didn't put in every kind of truck, but here's a little Dodge Ram 1500, 4x4, 10,000. The current bid. Only one person was bidding. That probably would have been an easy one to pick up. And it had pretty low mileage, if I remember right. Where's the mileage? 70,000. It's not that low, but looks like it's in really good shape. But you can see the kind of vehicles you could pick up. So eBuy, their Advantage eBuy has a similar thing. You can go in there and do the buyer's thing, or as a contractor, and sign up with that. Federal government's online shopping, millions of products and services. Have you used any of these? You have? Okay. So some of you have used them. Provides a one-stop shopping source to meet all your procurement needs. Sounds like a radio commercial to me. So cooperative purchasing, their intergovernmental procurement or joint purchasing is approved under 2 CFR Part 200.318E. And if HUD is telling you that it is not, I would send them this regulation section, because that doesn't make any sense to me if they were not allowing that. I don't know if somebody said that or if that was a figment of my imagination. There are also state government cooperatives. I think every state has them. Whether or not they will work with tribes is, some of them will. The 3 that I contacted did, in different ways though. There's also government excess and surplus property acquisition. So these are all different areas that have different products at different rates. The infamous ORPN, this is the Oregon Procurement Information Network. Okay, this is where I was wrong about the $2,000. The $2,000 was for the state of Oregon, our procurement. Other states, if the tribe has any kind of state contracts or state grants, then they're eligible for many of the services that the state offers as well. I don't know how many states have grants like that, but it could be like child welfare. I know we had child welfare grants for ours. So there's another place to go register. And these are the products that site would do, although none of you are in Oregon. But you can see there's a lot of stuff. Another page. We got a state of New Jersey. I figured I should try and get one in your area here at least. That's their homepage. What I found frustrating on this one is when I went down to see who was eligible, it didn't say anything about tribes. So I called them up and said, "Yo, do you serve tribes?" I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "Well, it's not on your website. You need to put it on your website." So that's kind of interesting. And here's another one. The state of Texas has it. And these all work with tribes. Texas also works with tribes, but didn't have them on their website. So you might want to look at your local travel agency, and if the tribe has any grants through any of their departments, generally you can use their cooperative purchasing as well. And again, save all that time putting that stuff all together. Time here. So independent audits we talked about. You've got how to prepare that in your documents. Cost analysis techniques. RS means is one way to get that data without having to have a professional on board, although you do have to pay them. If you're looking for specs and construction information and cost, it does. They have square foot, dollar per square foot for building various types of structures, things of that nature. And they're one of the largest businesses of that in the country. And there's a picture of their website. And price analysis techniques, you need to make sure it's reasonable. So comparing prices, comparing past prices for similar contracts. Yardstick, this is like the square footage we were talking about. And there's one of our editions of a Northwest project. And may, oh, your developments flourish, and procurements flourish. So I don't know if there were any questions. I know that's a lot of material I threw out at you guys. If you can, I don't know if they have the evaluations at their tables for just, are they gonna do one evaluation for the day for us? Okay, okay, so never mind on this one. And I guess we'll break for lunch. I can't hear you.
It'll be handed out right at the time that we, after we get back from lunch in the first, session.
Okay, evaluation will be distributed then. So
Yes.
forget everything I did wrong and say how wonderful I am. And enjoy your lunch. Thank you for your time.